the Major League home run leader, and Raleigh, who just squeaked in.
Honestly, he was hyping me up. He was firing me up the whole time. I'd hit one good, and he'd be like, "Let's go!" And I don't know, it just got me going. And I think that's why I got in good spurts during the Derby. And he was talking, through me to my dad, talking about where he should throw it. So it was a lot of fun. He was really good, and it was an awesome experience. It means the world, I could have hit 0 home runs, and I would have had just as much fun. So I just can't believe we won. It's unbelievable.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Dewing starts now.
All right, got a variety of different items I want to accomplish on the show today. Chad Dewing here, Rip City Drive. I'll be with you up until 6 o'clock. A variety of different ways that you can participate in the program. Number one, you can call the show and talk with me. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. 503-248-0620. You can call the show, and whatever you want to talk about is fine by me. The big topic yesterday was young Hansen, and I wanted to know what your thoughts were on him through the first couple of games down at Summer League. He's been tremendous. In fact, today I heard Colin Cowherd discussing Hansen, and from the people I've communicated with who are down in Vegas, they say the two big topics, of course, are Cooper Flagg and young Hansen, and it's looking more and more like the Blazers may have found a diamond in the rough in Hansen. So if you want to talk about him, that's fine. The Blazers will be in action tonight. They take on the Pelicans down in Vegas. Tip-off will be at 7 o'clock, and you can watch it on Blazers Vision, on KUNP, or on ESPN. So you got multiple options to watch the game and continue to watch the play of the Blazers' new center, young Hansen. So you can also participate by going to youtube.com and just pull up our homepage, Rip City Radio 620. We stream all of our local shows. You can see in studio. You could take a look at my regrettable mug and participate in the chat if you want to do that. And you can hit me up on social media at Chad in Rip City. Again, that telephone number 503-248-0620. It is Tuesday, which means I come bearing gifts today, my friends. We have Hops Ticket Tuesday. We'll give away a 4-pack of tickets for the Hops coming up at 5 o'clock. This will be an opportunity for you to sit in the Rip City Radio row out at Hillsborough Ballpark and take in some baseball. And right now, as I gaze out the window to my left, it's beautiful outside. The summertime weather is awesome. I'm loving it right now. It's beautiful in the morning. It's warm in the afternoon. And the evenings with the long days and the sunset are just awesome. So I'm a big fan. So a chance for you to win baseball tickets coming up at 5 o'clock. Now, on the show today, we're going to do 3 different things. Number one, Casey Holdaw of the Trailblazers, Trailblazer reporter. He's in Vegas for Summer League. He's going to join the show. I haven't talked with him in a while, and I can't wait to get his take on what he's seeing from young Hansen and the rest of the young Blazers. I want to kind of get a gauge on the buzz surrounding Hansen and the way that he's been able to play. Now, I did hear from a friend of mine yesterday who's down at Summer League, and apparently Hansen is a bit socially awkward. And I'm like, well, of course he is. 20 years old. Number one, if you're 20 and you're a male, especially if you stand 7 feet or taller, life is awkward. When I was 20, everything I tried to do was awkward. School, work, talking to females, you name it. It was all awkward for me at 20. But also he's in a brand new country, adjusting to NBA basketball. A lot of pressure on him as a first-round draft choice. He's got an entire country of 1.4 billion people in his corner, and he doesn't speak English. And he's learning on the fly. Yeah, that's awkward. It's tough. But Hansen, you could tell he's having fun. And when he's on the basketball floor, that universal language of basketball, not an issue for him. So I can't wait to see him tonight. And just enjoying watching that process. It's been so much more than what I could have expected. So we'll talk with Casey Holdaw, who will join us at 3:20. And then at 4:20, The Godfather, my good friend, Dwight James. The Godfather is going to join us because I want to get his updated take on the NBA and expansion. From my understanding, there are some issues with the NBA trying to expand and add 2 teams. And those 2 teams that we've heard about now for the last few years, Seattle and Las Vegas. But the problem is with the new TV deal that's now in place and the revenues that are rolling into the owners, some of them do not want to share the pie. They don't want to share the revenues. They don't want to share the pie, and they don't want 2 more teams coming in. And really, it comes down to the money. And I believe James Dolan, no surprise, is leading the pack there. Now, the reason why I think this is significant is if the NBA does not add expansion teams, what does that mean for Seattle? And what does that mean for the Portland Trailblazers if they were to have an ownership group step in from the Seattle area? So that's what we'll talk with the Godfather about. And then at 5:20, PJ Dave, our good friend David Coleman, is going to join the program, and we'll preview the Open Championship. And I've got a great clip from Scotty Scheffler that I will play a little bit later in the show, but he continues to blow me away. He's like the best golfer in the world right now, and he's one of those guys that has unique perspective where he's great at golf, he's driven to win, but yet at the same time acknowledges that winning tournaments is not what it's all about. He's got a bigger idea of what's really important in life. And so it's just interesting to hear him kind of work through some of his thoughts at the press conference. But the Open Championship, I can't wait to get the take from Dave on the course, the way it's going to lay out, and how things will go for the players. Wind and weather, always part of the mix over there at the Open, and we'll see how things play out. But looking forward to another major coming up this week, and it will launch on Thursday. So we'll hear from Scotty Scheffler. And also I want to dive into expansion a little bit. We'll hear from SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. I mentioned it in the update, but it appears, according to Kirby Smart, head coach at Georgia, that the majority of SEC coaches favor in expansion the 5+11 model, which would be the 5 highest-ranked conference champions, and then you would have 11 at-large teams. And the reason why the SEC coaches like this is because you don't have all these qualifiers set. So really what it does is it opens the door for more Big Ten and SEC schools to get in. Now, I know that they've talked about a 14-team model, a 16-team model. I think they're going to go to 16 starting in 2026. It will go to 16, and I think that's because everyone sees the dollar signs. And I know that people had issues with the way the playoff field was seated this past year. All I know is I thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, to wait my entire life for an actual playoff with more teams added, it was finally starting to take shape into something that's going to become bigger and better. And they're going to reseed it differently this year. I think we'll get a better, setup in the playoff. And then going into 2026, they'll open it up to 16 teams. And trust me, I know that some of you younger football fans out there, you maybe don't truly appreciate the greatness, which is the college football playoff. But the reason why this is so important to me is because I grew up for years and years and years, decades, where we didn't even have a playoff. And because of these idiots who were so dead set on getting cash and stuffing it in their fat-ass pockets from their bowl games, we had these bowl alliances between conferences. So you couldn't even match up in some situations the 2 best teams in the country to play in a bowl game to try and determine a national champion. And that's why we had split national championships. Absurd. You had the AP poll and you had the coaches poll. And the votes would determine where the teams were ranked. And then we saw it in 91 with Washington and Miami. Washington, because of the conference they're in the Pac-10, they were aligned into the Rose Bowl. Miami was destined for the Orange Bowl, and there's no way that those 2 teams could play each other. So what you ended up with was 2 teams who didn't lose a game, who dominated competition, and they had to argue about who was the real champion. Coaches went with UW, and the AP went with Miami. And so you have this great debate about who would have won that game. That's absurd. It should never come down to that. We should never have bowl alliances where you can't match up and play the other best team in the country. And now we finally have a legitimate playoff. So I'm really excited about it. And I favor expansion out to 16 teams. And what I discovered last year with the first year of the expanded playoff with 12 teams, it was very simple. And I didn't realize at the beginning of the year how it was going to play out. But what happened is because you had more slots available in the playoff, you had more games with greater importance throughout the entire season and into the final week of the regular season and into the conference championship weekend, to where you had multiple teams who were still alive for a playoff berth. And what this did was generate more excitement for more fan bases across the country and created some very compelling football. Now, the playoff didn't produce the type of games we were hoping for, but it actually enhanced, in my mind, the regular season. And people had argued that it would water down the regular season. I think it produced a lot of great games of importance throughout the course of the year. And because of the expansion, you had teams like Boise, like Arizona State, teams that normally would not get a sniff of a 4-team playoff, who were alive and in a position to get into the postseason, which is awesome. So I love the direction that college football is going with expansion, and we'll hear from Greg Sankey. But very excited about college football right now. You know, I've mentioned this before. My sports, it changes every couple of years, where like the NFL will be number one. The NBA's been number one for a while. But right now for me, it's college football. That's my number one. I desire it. I love to watch it. I love to play the NCAA college football game. Like, I'm all in on college football right now. And I thought last year was awesome. So those are the items that we will discuss today. But when we come back, we're going to head down to Las Vegas, and we'll get the latest on young Hansen and the Trailblazers from Casey Holdaw, who is down in Vegas right now with the Blazers. And Portland will be in action tonight, 7 o'clock tip. 3 ways to watch: Blazers Vision, KUNP, and ESPN, as they take on the Pelicans at 7 o'clock. The All-Star game, first pitch at 5 on Fox from Atlanta. And how about Cal Raleigh last night going wild? Wins the home run derby after he predicted he would do it at 8 years of age. And he entered the All-Star break with 38 home runs, which I think trails only Barry Bonds, who I think had 39 back in 2001, entering the All-Star break. Cal Raleigh is on fire. Who would have thought that Raleigh, not Rodriguez, was the franchise player? All right, Casey Holdaw is coming up next. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, time to head to Las Vegas. Our next guest is a Trailblazers insider and reporter. He's in Las Vegas for Summer League, and he joins the show right now. It's Casey Holdog. Casey, long time no chat, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been a minute, Chad. I think probably since the last game of the season. So yeah, it's good to hear you.
Yeah, it's really great. I'm enjoying the summertime. I hope you are as well. So I haven't spoken with you since the draft, so I got to go back before we talk about the games that we've seen in Vegas thus far. So on draft night, walk me through what you were thinking when the Blazers moved back 5 spots and then selected a player that a lot of people hadn't even heard of.
Yeah, I think that I had a few guys that I thought were kind of their targets, and so when they moved back, I thought it was maybe because one of the guys that they had really liked had already gotten taken. And so then I thought maybe it was more just like a general play, like, hey, the guy we wanted, the guy number 1 on our board is gone. Why don't we move back a few spots, maybe get a few assets, and take a guy that we know is going to be available later on. So I thought that was still more like maybe like kind of like an Asa Newell kind of guy or something like that. And so when they went with Hansen, I was like, I felt like kind of an idiot, actually, because so he was in that workout with Asa Newell, and like the workout they had on May 29th, I had said over and over and over and over again. The workout they had on May 29th was basically all first-round guys, all guys expected to take in the first round, except for young Hansen. And so then when they took him, I was like, oh, so that was their plan all along, Casey. It's like you just weren't smart enough to recognize what was going on. So I was just as shocked as everybody else was. And so then, but once we kind of started getting a chance to talk to him and kind of seeing what the game was about, I was like, okay, I understand the pick. And, I think it's really an indication too of kind of the way that the team kind of views how they want to be and what they want their culture to be, which is that, we're going to do things the way that we do them, and we're going to put in the work, and we're going to be confident in our work and what we see, and we're not necessarily going to let kind of what outside noise or conventional wisdom says we should do. And so, for them to do that is, that's a gutsy move. Like, you're gonna take some criticism for making that pick. And for it to kind of come out, at least in these first couple of games of Summer League, look as good as it has, I think is probably really validating to those guys and just really validating to the organization. They're like, hey, yeah, like we know what we're doing. Like we're not going to look at mock drafts and have that define kind of what we think we should do. We're going to do our own scouting, put on our own work, and we're going to come to our own conclusion. And we feel like we're smart and intelligent. We've put in the work. And we're gonna trust that work. And I would say so far, like it's looked like a really smart decision. And so I think at least initially, I think you really got to feel good about it and kind of tip your cap to Joe and his staff, because like that's not an easy thing to do. Just to go completely off the board. That again, there's going to be people who are like, what is Portland doing there? Do these guys, do they even know what they're doing, or are they drafting a Chinese guy because they're selling the team? Like all these different kinds of things. And so, for at least in these initial days, for Young to look as good as he has, I think has been really cool. Like I just think it's been kind of validating.
Yeah, there's no question, and I'm with you on the front office. I respect a front office that has the conviction to trust their scouting process. And I'll tell you what, Mike Schmitz and Joe Cronin, that entire team, like I trust what they're doing, and I like their process, and I think they're really smart guys. And I think Schmitz, what a great hire that was. He's like one of those young and up and coming bright minds in all of sports who, really has a good eye for talent. So I really like their process there and the conviction. But then we saw it in the opening game against the Warriors, where I was just blown away by how comfortable he moved around and looked out there. Like it didn't look like the moment was too big for him. He was ready.
Absolutely. And I think that was my main takeaway too, Chad, is that, when you get in those situations, particularly as a big man, you're not a shy guy, but, like, I think maybe playing in Summer League last year maybe helped him a little bit with the Chinese national team. But, yeah, you just kind of assume he's going to get out there and, like, maybe be a little tentative, or, like, maybe things are moving a little too fast. And in that first play, I mean, like, not only did he make that great play, but, like, he's directing traffic. Like, he's telling guys where to go, which, like, I think to do that as a 20-year-old from China who is playing his first game with the team that just drafted him, with a bunch of other guys who have played a lot more basketball in the States than he has, I think that's that's not an easy thing to do, and especially and not what I was expecting at all. Like I would not have expected him to come out and been like, "Hey guys, go here," pointing guys in the direction and like knowing where they're supposed to be at before they even get there. Like more than like the actual passes themselves or kind of some of the way that he's been able to kind of manipulate things. Just that willingness to be like, I know what's going on. I'm going to act like I know what's going on. And to your point, yeah, like never feeling like it's like, oh boy, he's a little too young or a little too green to kind of deal with this. Like that has not been the case at all, which like I would not have expected that. Like, and that's a normal thing for guys who play in the NCAAs who are good, like that is not an uncommon thing to come into summer league and struggle a little bit and just feel like you don't necessarily know your place on a new team because, you're new to it. So it's not like that pecking order or kind of that expectation has been really like sussed out yet. So for him to come in, play as well as he has and be as dynamic as he has in terms of like, again, just talking on the team, like I've been really impressed by that. It just, almost as much as the actual play on the court. So it's, again, like in terms of kind of what you would hope to see out of Hansen here in Vegas, like I don't know what else really he could do at this point. Like I feel like he has, through 2 games at least, has really exceeded all expectations that I had.
What's amazing, you mentioned the communication. I was concerned about, the communication barrier and the fact that he doesn't speak English. But then Chauncey Billups made that comment after the draft that, hey, basketball is a universal language. And I got to thinking about it, and he's right, because you get on the floor, and it doesn't matter where you come from. Basketball is the same game. And so you can look at a guy, you have a feel for the game, and it's that nonverbal communication that everyone understands when you're on the floor. And you could see it in that first game where it's like, oh, he's going to be fine.
Absolutely. And, I've been watching basketball professionally for 20-something years, and I'm just an idiot, and even when stuff is happening on the court, like, I know what's going to happen next, it just becomes, like, innate. You're like, okay, I see this action, and I know kind of generally what's going to happen from that. And you can do that sitting up in the stands, and so, like, when you're playing the game and you're actually smart about the game, like these guys are, you get out there, and it's not like, it doesn't necessarily run itself, but there is like a rhythm to the sport that when you're good at it, you just start to pick up on and you start to react to your understanding of the game and your instincts of the game less than what you're seeing or what you're hearing. So obviously talking on the court is important, particularly from a defensive perspective. And I wouldn't want to discount the importance of kind of communication on the court, but particularly like on the offensive end, it's like that's really more about motion and knowing where you're supposed to be before you're supposed to be there. And it's not like you're like, hey, I'm going to run over there. Okay, I'm going to go to the corner now. Oh, okay, pass me the ball. Like, that's not how it works. You do that instinctually because you have to beat the defense to those spots anyways. And so in terms of kind of like the language barrier, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a problem, though his English is already improving. And like it always is with international guys, their English is always much better than I think they even understand.
Yes.
So it's going to get there. But like as far as like it being an impediment on the court, I don't feel like there's been a time where I've been watching those first 2 games where I was like, oh, they missed that because Hansen didn't kind of understand what they were asking of him there. Like that, I can't recall a time of that happening. So it will be better when he's able to communicate more fluently in English. But like I can tell, like just with his interactions, like even on the bench, like they're getting by. Like people know what he's trying to get from them, and vice versa. Like I think he understands kind of I think he probably understands more than he's maybe able to verbalize, anyways. So like it has not seemed to me like it's been at all an issue. And again, I think part of that just speaks to how intelligent he is as a basketball player. Like I mean, you can just see like the way that he moves with the ball and the way that he moves the ball, like that he has a very strong basketball IQ and an instinctual understanding of how motion works, particularly on the offensive end on a basketball court. So I think it has not been an issue that I think we thought it might be.
Hey, Casey, what are you seeing in terms of his strength? Obviously he's going to be dealing with some physicality throughout the course of his first season in the NBA. How does he look, strength-wise when he's dealing with strong bodies?
I feel like he's been great. Like I don't feel like I've seen him get pushed around at all. I think, the game versus the Pelicans tonight, I'm hoping that Derek Queen plays because I think that'll be an interesting matchup for Hansen to go up against a guy who's, got a bit more size and is a bit more physical. So I'll be curious to see how that works out for him because I think generally I feel like he hasn't been pushed around. I mean, he's a pretty big guy anyways. I think, the fitness piece is where he's probably got the most room to grow. And I mean, like he's been very honest about that too. I mean, his post game after the Grizzlies game, I mean, he was like, my legs were dead. I need to do better in terms of fitness. Like it's a back-to-back. Like I feel like I need to be in better shape because like I feel like I'm letting guys down because I'm not able to get up and down as much as I would like. And so I think that's the area from a physical perspective that he's probably got to make the most strides on. And that's, again, like that's just big men in the NBA. I mean, you look at Donovan Clingan, like, I mean, I know you guys haven't got to see Donovan a whole lot, but like I've seen him, in a couple workouts here lately. He has already transformed his body from where he was at last year to this year. Like he's so much more slimmed down. He's so much more toned. And like, that's just something that, like when you're a 20-year-old, like that's just what your body is, and like, until you get like in a real program, like, you're just kind of a little, just a little doughier than you probably want to be. And so I'm not at all worried about that. I'm guessing that by time kind of first few months of the NBA season, he will be where he wants to be in terms of his fitness. Because otherwise, like from a strength perspective, like I know he's going to have hard times in the NBA during his rookie season. Every rookie does. Like it's not like he's going to encounter the same issues that every other big man in the NBA encounters when you're young and 20 years old and trying to make your way in the league. But like I feel like he hasn't gotten pushed around. I feel like he's got a big body. He's got really good footwork too. Like his base is like he's really smart about it. Like he's not like a bumbling kind of like doesn't understand his body big man. He's just like a regular dude who just happens to be 7'1". And so like I think those guys generally have a lot more going for them than the guys who are maybe like, you look at them a little bit and you're like, what's going on there? Like you just look a little bit different than like a regular human being does. And Hansen just looks like a regular guy who's just huge. So like I've been really heartened by that too. Just the way he's dealt with it physically, the way he's dealt with it mentally, the way he's dealt with, again, the communication barrier, like everything that I kind of came to the summer league being like, these are probably some of the issues he's going to encounter. Like so far through 2 games, all of them has been answered. Like I really feel like he has done everything you would want him to do. Like all of the concerns that I have not come to fruition. And I think that's for any rookie, like at summer league, I think that's really rare. And so again, we're 2 games in, don't want to get too far over the skis, but like, I really feel like he has answered a lot of questions that I had about kind of just how this was going to work. And he's answered those questions really well.
I'm with you on that 100%. We're talking with Casey Holdahl, Trailblazers insider and reporter. He's down in Vegas for Summer League. I'm just looking at the roster, and what's exciting for me is that just by numbers alone, he's probably going to get a chance to play on a regular basis, don't you think?
I would imagine. I mean, I think, it's going to what he's able to do in the off season. I mean, I think that's going to factor into it a bit. Like I know that there's the Asian Cup starts in beginning of August. I'm not sure he's going to play in that or not. I don't know if he's going to stay in Portland or not, and I don't know if he's going to go back to China or not. So like, there's some time between now and then. And I think a lot of it is based off of how Chauncey's going to want to play next season. But, when DeAndre moving on, I mean, there's minutes there now for sure. And I mean, I think you assume that Donovan is coming into it next year as a starter. But like, if he's able to play anywhere close to the way he's played at Summer League so far, like, I think he's the kind of guy you got to find minutes for. And he also, too, like the way that he plays, like the ability to like play make from that high post position and just have a center who can, again, facilitate is like, that's just something we haven't really had a whole lot of in Portland. And we're just used to kind of more ball dominant guards kind of having to kind of run the show that way. To be able to throw a different look at it with a secondary lineup where, you got Hansen out there and another point guard. Like, I just think it opens up a lot of opportunities for playing a bit of a different way in a second unit. And so, yeah, like I think when it was drafted, you looked at the roster and you're like, boy, Blazers got 5 centers on the team. Like, how's that going to work? I think, with DeAndre moving on and, obviously, I think Donovan's going to play a lot of minutes with Rob. You always need to make sure that you're managing him properly so he's not getting into injury issues. And Dwop kind of, can play a 4-5. So I think you're right, Chad. I think I think he's going to get minutes, and I think that's a really good thing. When you're a team like the Blazers, I know they're kind of moving more towards being a competitive team, but you also want to still develop guys as well. And when you draft, a 20-year-old from China, like, you're going to need to develop him, but you're going to need to play. And I think we've also seen too here in just the first couple of games of Summer League. I wouldn't say that Hansen is too good to play in the G League, but I don't know that he would necessarily get a ton out of playing in the G League. So I'm really hopeful he's able to come in and get some minutes. Like, if he's able to work on his body and, again, get his fitness up, and that's really the only thing for me. And also, like, improve his ability to communicate a little bit. If he's able to do those two things in the off season, I think your expectation going into the regular season is that he is going to play, because he plays a style of play that I think any team can use, and that's going to fit in well on a team that doesn't, and it's not going to, like, take anything away from anybody else. So I think you're exactly right, Chad. I think there's a real possibility there's some rotation minutes for Hansen next year.
All right, Casey, one final thought. The Blazers have done a good job over the last couple of years of building a fine culture. I think it's nice to see a lot of his teammates down there cheering him on.
Oh, it's been great. And, like, it really does speak to kind of what they're trying to do from a culture perspective for Joe and Chauncey. Like, they really want this thing to be like a welcoming team environment where everyone is supporting each other and challenging each other and all moving in one direction and really having a camaraderie of a team. And so I think that's been really cool to see. I think for a lot of these guys too, I think they're as curious to see what Hansen's about as the fans are, they didn't have any more knowledge of him than any of us did. And so I think for them, part of it is they want to be here to support the team. And it's great to see basically, the majority of the roster in Las Vegas supporting the team and cheering them on. But also, I'm guessing some of them was like, I want to get a look at this guy. Like, what do we got here? Because, like, players are always really interested in kind of the new players on their team and what that means for them and how that might be able to help them. And so I think there's also some natural curiosity there from the rest of the guys on the roster that are like, hey, I don't really know a whole lot about this guy. Let's lay eyes on him a little bit. Let's see him in practices a little bit and see what he's about. So I think it's great. And then you're exactly right, Chad. It's a total culture thing. And it's really like from kind of, trying to keep the guys together more during the off season to the hires they've made on their assistant coaching staff and bringing in former players and all like kind of real, defensive hard-nosed guys, from really trying to have better relationships with our alumni over the year. That's been a real charge for the team over the last 5-6 seasons, is to like really bringing guys back into the fold and being an organization that is more welcoming of former players. You got Brian Grant here, and I don't know that I don't know if it's been made official, kind of his role with the team, but I think you can expect that you're going to be seeing him around a lot more too. Like, it's really just a broader notion of like, this is what we want the Trailblazers to be. Like, this is how we want to conduct ourselves. This is how we want to present ourselves to our fans and to our players and to the rest of the league. We're going to do the things that we do. We're going to be a family and a community, and we're going to work hard. And we're going to, again, challenge each other, but we're going to support each other as well. And I think they've really gone a long way to doing that. And it takes time, like that is a process. And you gotta bring in some people, and sometimes you got to let some people go and to get to where you want to go. And so I do feel like they've really made progress on that stride. And it has been something, Chad, that they have. It has been an explicit charge. It's like, we need to be better at these things. Let's really put our money where our mouth is in terms of like saying that these are the things that we're going to be motivated by, and we're going to stick to them, and we're going to do them well. And it's going to help us establish a culture that's going to benefit us in the long run. And that's what they've been doing. And I think we're starting to see more and more kind of some of the fruits of those things they've been doing for the last couple of years under Joe and Chauncey.
All right, the Blazers in action tonight. Tip-off at 7 against the Pelicans down in Las Vegas. You can watch it on KUNP, Blazers Vision, and ESPN. He's with the Trailblazers, insider and reporter Casey Holdahl. Casey, really enjoyed the chat, my friend. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll catch up soon.
It's always a pleasure, Chad. Appreciate it, man.
You got it. There you go, Casey Holdahl. Yeah, a lot of things to be excited about. And pretty much everyone I've talked to, the reaction is the same. Didn't see that coming. I think Hansen, and it's not just us, the fans, but I think he's surprised, people around the NBA with his play. And maybe not some of these scouts or front office individuals who are well aware of his game and what he's capable of. But as Casey pointed out, even his teammates who are down there, they haven't watched him play. They were curious, like we all are. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Big thanks to Casey Holdahl. The Godfather, Dwight James, joins the program at 4:20. We'll get his take on expansion and whether or not the NBA is going to be able to get that done. I guess what I'm trying to say is that expansion would be best because it would fully protect the Trailblazers and their spot here in Portland. So we'll talk with the Godfather at 4:20. You can jump on board 503-248-0620 on YouTube. Just pull up Rip City Radio 620. You can watch the live stream, and we're always live and streaming on our free iHeartRadio app. All right, Tony and Boring was worried about my voice in the opening segment. He's like, what's wrong with your moneymaker? It sounds a little bit gravelly. There's nothing wrong. I just ate a nutrition bar 5 minutes before the show. I was in a hurry. I needed something to eat to pick up the blood sugar just a bit, and it hadn't cleared the pipes when the show began. There's no good timing. I don't like to eat during the show, but I do. But you have to be careful. The no-nos are you cannot do peanuts. I would say any type of nuts when you're talking on the radio, that is the worst thing. That's a death nail. That's like an NBA player suffering an Achilles tear. You're never the same after you do it. So nuts are a no-no. Popcorn is a really bad idea. And, of course, I'm not going to eat popcorn during a radio show. Like, I'm just not doing that. That's ridiculous. Who does that? But I know people that do that when they're on air. They eat popcorn. And I just marvel at them, like, what are you doing? But nuts occasionally because I like nuts. Almonds. What am I into right now? There's this place up there at the Pike Place Market. I think they're called Pike Place Nuts. I think that's the name. Every time my daughter goes up to Seattle, I make her stop off at that little nut shop and pick me up a couple of bags of their mixed nuts. And then what I do is I vacuum seal it. I figured out how to use one of these vacuum sealers, and it's genius because they've got these new vacuum seal bags that are like Ziploc bags, but you hook up the device, it pumps out all the air, and it keeps them fresh. So I like nuts, but I'm not going to do it during the radio show. So I've found there are some nutrition bars that are pretty good. But I don't like to eat too much before the show or during the show because I'll get tired. I'm one of those people where, like, at nighttime, like, I'm big on having a moment to relax. So when I get home, I've got all these different things I want to get done and then make sure the kids are taken care of. Puppy shots is a process to feed him every night. Like, it's a real pain in the ass. I love my dog, but it's like, come on, man. Do I have to get out the squeaky balls and play with you to get you to eat your food every night? And the answer would be yes. Shots he's like a mentally deranged dachshund. Every other dachshund I've ever known or had they're cows. They have no cutoff switch when it comes to eating. They're food motivated 100%. But Shots is the only dachshund I've ever come across that's not food motivated. So I have to trick him into eating his food. So I get that taken care of. And then I like to take time, prepare my dinner, and then I like to sit down and enjoy a program or something while I'm eating. And that's a moment where I can kind of decompress. I'm not saying that TV is necessarily good for us in large quantities, but what I like about a nice program or something on YouTube is that it allows me for the period of time I'm eating my dinner to just turn my brain off. Where I don't have to think. I'm just being entertained with whatever it is I'm watching. And I love that. But I have to take care of everything else. So I do that at night, and then after I'm done eating, then it puts me in my relaxed state to where when I eventually journey off to bed, I can sleep and sleep well. And I've been sleeping well the last couple of nights. The back is feeling good. The body's feeling good. I've got some tendonitis in my right knee, probably from all the activity I've been doing over the last couple of months. But, yeah, I feel good and sleeping really well. I just love the summertime. Give me longer days and warmer weather, and I'm a happy guy. That's how I operate. That's how I roll. I'm a big fan. All right, 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. You can jump on YouTube, youtube.com, and pull up Rip City Radio 620. We'll talk to the Godfather, Dwight James, at 420. I want to get his latest take on expansion. There are owners who are fighting it. But most importantly, I don't care about James Dolan. I mean, that guy, he can put an egg in his shoe and beat it for all I care. But he is one of the guys who is resisting the idea of expansion because these owners, they are greedy and they love money. And I don't have a problem with that. They're rich. They don't want to share in the profits. 2 more teams means you divide the pie, you get a smaller slice of the pie. And some of the owners don't want a smaller, a piece of the pie because they got the new TV deal and these revenues streaming in, like Big Scratch. They love that. So, but the more important question is not about that. It's about what does that mean for the Trailblazers? And what would it mean for the Trailblazers if the NBA doesn't expand and let's say, I don't know, a group from Seattle buys them. Because what I've heard from, pretty good sourcing is that there's two different, how shall we say, factions or groups inside of Amazon that I think want to get into the ownership game. And they got big bucks. So something to keep an eye on. So we'll get the latest from The Godfather. But that's what I was told is there are, I think, two separate groups inside of Amazon that have interest in NBA ownership. I've also heard that eventually when the Seahawks sell, that the likely person to take over that team is going to be Steve Ballmer. So we'll see what happens. But Steve Ballmer, I mean, we already know what he's like at NBA games with the red face. I just love the fact that a billionaire, and he has got mass cash. Like Steve Ballmer is super rich, but I just love the fact that a guy like that can show up at an NBA game, sit courtside, be red-faced, and yelling like a crazy fan. He's crazy. So I want to see him become the Hawks owner so he can be like in the Hawks nest with a red face and just yelling at the officials. And that is a loud stadium. All right, 503-248-0620. The Godfather is going to join us at 4:20. And then at 5:20, we'll preview the Open Championship with PJ Dave. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Trailblazers Summer League action continues tonight. They'll meet the Pelicans, 7 o'clock tip in Las Vegas. That game can be seen on Blazers Vision, ESPN, or KUNP. Casey Holdout joined the program at 3:20. You can podcast on our free iHeartRadio app. Open Championship kicks off Thursday from Roy Portrush. PGA David Coleman is going to join me at 5:20 to preview the tournament. All-Star game tonight for Major League Baseball from Atlanta. That first pitch is at 5 on Fox. Cal Raleigh entered the All-Star break with 38 home runs. He won the home run derby last night. Caitlin Clark and Sabrina Ionescu will headline the WNBA three-point shooting contest Friday as they kick off their All-Star weekend. And Kirby Smart, head coach at Georgia, says the majority of SEC coaches favor the 5+11 model for playoff expansion in 2026. The Godfather, Dwight James, will join me coming up in 20 minutes. All right, my good friend Rob Sipsky has chimed in. I was talking about how I don't like to eat much during the day because I don't want to feel lethargic during the program. My biggest fear is not having energy on air. Like, it really freaks me out. And this happened a long time ago when I was doing the morning show. I'll never forget it. And I don't think I've ever admitted this publicly because it was embarrassing. I was interviewing the dean of Portland Sports, Kerry Agers, and I think it was probably in the 6 o'clock hour or 7 o'clock hour. It was early in the show, and the hard part about doing morning radio over a long period of time, which I did, is you're operating on sleep deprivation at all times. You don't sleep much at night. You got to get up real early in the morning, like 2:33 a.m. That's a problem. That disrupts your entire life. And then you get stuck after the show, like, do I take a nap? Do I not take a nap? I would usually take a nap, and I would sleep too long. If a nap is like 4 hours, that's not a nap. That's like sleep. And then you're screwed. Well, long story short, I was in the middle of a show, and I fell asleep, and my head went forward and hit the microphone, and it woke me up. And the good thing is Kerry was answering the question and didn't even know I had fallen asleep. But after that, I was like freaked out because I'm like, you know what? Caffeine, whatever it takes, I got to make sure my energy is there because I was struggling. That was a long time ago. Now, again, I'm not going to fall asleep at, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but I like to make sure that energy is there. But Rob sent me a quote, and he said, sorry, it's a real crappy screenshot, and he's right, especially with my eyesight. I can't read anything or see anything now. Here it is. Which musician famously said not to eat before a performance because it's better to perform hungry? And according to what Rob found, it said that quote is often attributed to Leonard Cohen. And if memory serves correct, I think Cohen he does a lot of different things. Singer, songwriter. I think he's from Canada. I think he's also a poet. But Cohen once said, you perform better hungry than full. You sing better, you speak better. He believed that hunger sharpened focus and heightened emotional intensity, especially in live performance. I've been doing it right all along. I had no idea that Leonard Cohen took the same path, but that's what I try to accomplish. And not only that, but I don't gorge myself on food. So if I eat a lot and I get that, I don't like that uncomfortable feeling of, like at a Thanksgiving meal, where you get like the stomach expansion or whatever, because I eat pretty light volume most of the time. So like large quantities just make me feel, I don't like feeling lethargic, like a moo face. I just don't want to operate like that. So that's how I do that. All right, 503-248-0620. I want to play this for you. The Open Championship is coming up on, it's going to be, what day is that? Thursday. And, obviously Roy McIlroy is being talked about, Scotty Scheffler, it should be a great tournament. And the course looks tough. We'll get the take from David Coleman coming up at 5:20. But Scotty Scheffler is a fascinating individual because he's not programmed like the majority of elite athletes. And Scotty Scheffler right now is the best in the game, but his focus is different. And he was asked about, winning tournaments, his focus, what he thinks about, and this is the answer he gave, but very interesting. Let's take a listen to Scotty Scheffler.
I think it's kind of funny. I think, I think I said something after the Byron this year about it feels like you work your whole life to celebrate winning a tournament for a few minutes. It only lasts a few minutes, that kind of euphoric feeling. And to win the Byron Nelson Championship at home, I literally worked my entire life to become good at golf, to have an opportunity to win that tournament. And you win it, you celebrate, get to hug my family, my sister's there. It's such an amazing moment. And then it's like, okay, now what are we going to eat for dinner? Life goes on. Is it great to be able to win tournaments and to accomplish the things I have in the game of golf? Yeah. I mean, it brings tears to my eyes just to think about, because it's literally worked my entire life to become good at this sport, and to have that kind of sense of accomplishment, I think is a pretty cool feeling. To get to live out your dreams is very special. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm not out here to inspire the next generation of golfers. I'm not here to inspire somebody else to be the best player in the world, because what's the point? This is not a fulfilling life. It's fulfilling from the sense of accomplishment, but it's not fulfilling from a sense of the deepest places of your heart. There's a lot of people that make it to what they thought was going to fulfill them in life, and then you get there and all of a sudden you get to number one in the world, and then they're like, what's the point? And I really do believe that, because what is the point? You're like, why do I want to win this tournament so bad? That's something that I wrestle with on a daily basis. It's like showing up at the Masters every year. It's like, why do I want to win this golf tournament so badly? Why do I want to win the Open Championship so badly? I don't know, because if I win, it's going to be awesome for about 2 minutes. And then we're going to get to the next week, and it's going to be like, hey, you won 2 majors this year. How important is it for you to win the FedEx Cup playoffs? And it's just like, we're back here again, So we really do. We work so hard for such little moments. And, I'm kind of a sicko. I love putting in the work. I love being able to practice. I love getting out to live out my dreams. But at the end of the day, sometimes I just don't understand the point, because I don't know if I'm making any sense or not, but am I not? It's just one of those deals. I love the challenge. I love being able to play this game for a living. It's one of the greatest joys of my life. But does it fill the deepest wants and desires of my heart? Absolutely not.
All right, there's Scotty Scheffler. I think I understand what he's talking about. He wins a tournament. You celebrate for a few minutes, you go to dinner, and then you wake up the next morning. It's like, okay, what's next? I think that's a very healthy response. I think what we find there is that he doesn't find peace, joy, or contentment in winning golf tournaments or major championships. He obviously wants to, but that's not what drives him. And I was thinking back to some different people I've crossed paths with. I remember my dentist a couple of years ago, great dentist, Dr. Young. He was awesome. He was over there in North Portland off of Interstate Avenue. I don't even remember how I found him to begin with, but I discovered him 15 to 20 years ago. He and his wife were wonderful people, and he had a great practice going. And then he told me a couple of years ago, he's like, yeah, I'm going to retire. I'm shutting it down. I'm like, what? You're not old. Why are you leaving? I don't like change. So if I have a hairstylist or someone like that that's going to roll out and it's moving, or you get something like that, it just disrupts my inner being. I don't like change. Well, he told me that, he's enjoyed his practice and being able to serve his patients, but he wanted to do bigger and better things. And he thought he was being called overseas to find some of these very poor communities. And then all of a sudden he started showing me a bunch of pictures on his phone. He had gone on a trip. I forgot which country. Was it Thailand? I don't remember the country, but he went on a trip with some other dentists to a third world country where they were providing dental care to those in need who did not have access to proper dental care. And he showed me some of these people with their teeth and their mouth, and some had tumors, like some of the most jagged, messed up mouths I've ever seen in my life. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. I'm just saying that these people were in desperate need of care. And I think he was touched so much, he and his wife, by being able to go overseas and provide care to people who are truly in need. And that's what they believe their mission is now. You know, he'd had 25 years of practice. Now they wanted to take it overseas and go serve that way, which I think is pretty cool. You know, my Nana, you know, she was retired and she had been widowed a couple of times. You know, she could have traveled and spent more time with family or done a little bit of this or that. And she was always wonderful. Anytime I wanted to come and see her, anytime I wanted to talk to her on the phone, she was always there. Her and I were very tight. Well, she was spending her free time, and I didn't find out a lot of this stuff until after she had passed. You know, my dad and my Aunt Elaine had gone through all of her stuff, her affairs, you know, after she passed away. And they were blown away by how many different causes and different things that she was donating to. And then what I found out is that they had discovered these letters. She was going to different prisons in the Oklahoma area, and she was on an outreach. And so she would go and meet these people in prison, talk to them, form a relationship with them. And she said that she would pray for them, and then she would write letters and see how they were doing and check in with them. And this is like Nana, who was in her 80s, and she lived to be 90 plus. But she thought that there was, you know, she always told me that, you know, as long as I have breath, I've got to go out there and try to be productive on a larger scale. And so I always thought that was neat that, you know, cute little old Nana could make a big impact, you know, in her community with the people around her. So we see people like that. And I would imagine for athletes like Scotty Scheffler, you know, you think, man, if I get into that position, I win the championship, I get that brass ring, I've arrived. It's all good. But then when you get there, you realize, like, oh, this isn't everything I thought it would be. I'm not saying that championship doesn't matter, but there's bigger and more important things to go out there and do. And Scotty, I think, is discovering that. And I think that's a journey and a pathway, a process that we all go through, where you think, if I just get to this point, or I make this type of money, or I get a chance to do this or do that, that it's going to bring me peace. But then you get there and you realize, like, well, that's not what I thought it was going to be. And for Scotty, he's still searching. And I thought that was pretty open and honest from him. I mean, he's still got mad game, and he'll still destroy you on the course. I respect his game a lot. He's got a great feel for the game. His iron play is ridiculous, and he's just smooth. A smooth operator on the golf course. All right, the Godfather, Dwight James. We got to talk about expansion. I want to see what the Godfather is hearing. Yeah, what's going on with James Dolan? I would like to kneecap James Dolan. I just feel like he's a problem causer. He uses his money and influence to open up for the Eagles. He disrespects Charles Oakley. He fired a coach who was wildly successful. It would just be fun to kick him in the kneecap. That's all I'm saying. I can't believe he did that to Charles Oakley.
And like other people too, right, Chad? Doesn't he have like a running list of people who are just banned from the Garden? Like it's pretty petty.
Charles Oakley is a Knick legend. He had him forcibly removed from the arena. That's wild to me. All right, so we'll talk to the Godfather about expansion and what that could mean for the Trailblazers. And then we'll talk Open Championship at 5:20 with PGA Dave. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, you can read him. Go to dwightjames.substack.com. He is the Godfather, and he's back on the show. Godfather, what in the world's going on with Cal Raleigh entering the All-Star break with 38 home runs?
I don't know, Chad. Funny things happen in baseball that you can't really predict. Obviously, he's doing something that the catchers just don't do. And I keep saying this, and I hope I'm wrong. I just think it's so difficult for a catcher in the second half of the season to carry this on, and being a switch hitter makes it tougher because he doesn't get platooned. If you're facing a tough left-hander, he hits right-handed, okay? And the same thing happens the other side of the plate. So he's not going to get a lot of days off. He's fortunate to play in a place like Seattle where he doesn't have the kind of heat that you might have in some other cities in Major League Baseball. But it's going to be really hard to maintain in the second half, I think, because of the wear and tear of simply being a catcher. That's why, he's setting records for catchers. It's tough at that position, really tough. And he's had a lot of good hitters, Mike Piazza and Johnny Bench, Yogi Berra, tremendous hitters who've never done what he's done simply because of the rigors of being a catcher every day.
Yeah, it's been impressive to watch. You know what's great going into the second half of the season? There are great races on both sides, American and National League. Are you surprised the Detroit Tigers enter the All-Star break with 59 wins?
I'm not, Chad, because they have a good manager, and I think they've done the right thing in terms of player development. They brought a lot of guys through their farm system that are good players, and they have the kind of pitching it takes. And we saw some of this starting last season. You could tell at the end of the season they were one of the best teams in baseball, and I'm excited to see how they do in the postseason because their pitching lines up pretty well to go a long ways.
Do you like how the Dodgers are bringing Ohtani along slowly when it comes to pitching?
Well, yeah, and I think that's the only choice. I'm a little hesitant. Man, you don't want to lose that guy's bat, and you worry about him hurting his arm pitching simply because every guy who takes the mound for the Dodgers has arm trouble, it seems like.
It's true.
And it is. And you wonder what's going on down there, and I'm sure they've done a lot of internal studies trying to figure out why that happens, but it happens, and it's happening again this year. They go through pitchers like crazy, and bring him along real slow. And if you have to, don't use him very much. I would say I'd be really careful with him because, that's a big loss. If you've gotten by this far without using him on the mound at all, really. So you don't want to lose his bat. That's for sure.
We're talking to the Godfather, Dwight James. All right. For the longest time now, you and I have talked about it at length for the last few years. It seemed like NBA expansion was inevitable, and the two cities we had heard were Seattle and Las Vegas. But now it appears that Commissioner Silver is kind of backing off that insistence. What's going on right now with expansion in the NBA?
Well, I'll tell you, it all started with your favorite rock and roll star, New York Knicks owner James Dolan, who is a penny pincher, and he has rallied other owners. He owns the Knicks, for people who don't know. He's rallied other owners about expansion and the idea of sharing this big new TV contract with two more teams. They just don't want to divide the pie up and give two more teams a chance to get that money. And that's very unfortunate. And the difference between, they're going to get a big expansion fee from the two teams coming in, and they can also make a rule you're not eligible to get the TV money for the first 3 years or 4 years or whatever. They can do whatever they want, and if somebody doesn't want to buy the expansion team or pay the tariff for coming into the league, they don't have to. So that's what they should do, but this guy, Dolan, is kind of a troublemaker anyway, and he always has been. He's always rocking the boat about something, and they just have to get Seattle into the league, and that's kind of scary, Chad. It's, I know there are two local groups in Portland that want to buy the Blazers, and I've spoken with representatives of them, and I I have to say, they both have people with NBA front office experience, and they're both very worried that if they don't get the team, that somehow it's going to get sold to somebody from Seattle and it will get moved if, in fact, the league doesn't expand. And that's a shame. I'm still not thinking it's going to happen. But, I've talked to people all through the NBA, and my point has been the league's not going to let Portland lose this franchise. And what I get back is, well, they let Seattle lose theirs. And it's come to the point where the courts won't stop any franchise movement. And Al Davis showed that. And if you've got enough money to go to court, you can move these teams. And it would be a terrible thing to happen. And I'm not saying the odds are it's going to happen. I've still always believed that team's going to stay here, and I'll stick with that, Chad. But I'm just pointing out that I think now it's a possibility, where before I was always the guy saying, no, that's never going to happen.
So really, what a Blazer fan wants is we want NBA expansion, because then Seattle would be given a team and the Blazers would be perfectly fine, and they would be located in Portland without question.
Absolutely. But you look at it from the point of view of Burke Holt and Jody Allen. I mean, they're Seattleites, and they feel the pain of losing that team. And can you imagine? They'd be building statues of those people if they got a team and moved it into Seattle. And I don't necessarily think that's the right thing to do, but I understand it to a degree too. If the shoe was on the other foot, you wouldn't mind seeing somebody from Portland get that team in Seattle and move it back to Portland. Those people who did that would be heroes. And so I get it to a degree. But as long as there's qualified people who want to keep the team in Portland, that's who should, buy the team. And that's who the team should be sold to. So I'm still holding out a lot of hope that's what's going to happen. But again, I only raise that possibility because it is affecting the people trying to buy this team. It's given them, I think, extra motivation. In fact, it's why one of the groups even exists, I think, is just to keep something like that from happening.
Yeah, my big fear, of course, would be what I had heard about the two separate factions inside of Amazon that would have interest in being NBA owners. If someone from Amazon purchased the team and Seattle did not get an expansion team, they would almost certainly want to move it up there. Yeah,
and the group that's always been the forerunner or the front runner for the expansion team has enough money to buy them lock, stock, and barrel, and I'm very familiar with the Portland ownership, and it would be pretty easy sale, I think, and I believe they've probably already been vetted by the NBA because the whole talk of Seattle getting that expansion team. Look, that arena didn't get renovated in Seattle for the Seattle Kraken. No offense. Hockey's been great in Seattle. But, Chad, you know as well as I do, that thing was done to get basketball, NBA basketball
that was
back
the
in
purpose.
Seattle, right?
Yes, that was the purpose behind it. And I got to admit, Climate Pledge is great. They did a phenomenal job, and it would be great for basketball. There's no question about it. But you've been around here a long time. Can you imagine anything more devastating than the Trailblazers being pulled to Seattle? Like, that's a death nail for this city. That would be awful.
Yeah, Chad. On top of all the other things that are going on with all the businesses evacuating, all the wealthy people evacuating, people not only going to the suburbs but leaving the state entirely, that would be the real topper of the whole thing, and that would push Portland back to being a small town again, a bush league town. That's what the talk was back in the 60s, that this is a bush league town, and that's what prompted, I think, people to go out and try to find major league sports. Harry Glickman being the hero there, and a guy who believed in Portland and brought a team in, and oh man, it would be a horrible blow to the city.
Okay, so to summarize here, what you're saying is that that there are local groups that have an interest in buying the team to keep it located here in Portland.
Yes, there are, I mean, I know of two. I don't pretend to know all of the groups who are interested because there's supposedly a lot of groups interested in purchasing the team. There's just so many people who want to own sports franchises nowadays. They all want to get in on it. It's a good investment. It's fun. It makes them heroes. They get to hang out with players, they think. And there are two groups that I know of, and they're very dedicated to keeping the team here and will do whatever they can. And the big thing is, as I understand it, they have the money. And it should go. What bothers me is there'll be a bidding war, and somebody will outbid them simply because of the desperation to get a team back in Seattle. But again, you said it right, Chad. We should be rooting for expansion in the NBA because if there's expansion, Seattle will be taken care of. And then that worry goes away. We don't have to worry about it at all.
Okay, so what you're saying is that when it comes, Commissioner Silver works for the owners. So even if Silver is adamantly against the Blazers leaving town or any team being moved to a different location, there's really nothing he can do to prevent it from happening.
I think that's true. And it takes a board of governors vote to move a team. But all the owners, we've seen this over and over, they may want to move their team someday. So it's pretty hard to get them to vote again. Yeah, they don't want to rain on somebody else's parade. Plus, every time a team is moved, their threats in their city of moving the team are more valid. So they'll all go back to local government and say, they're getting arenas built in Seattle or renovated in Seattle and Las Vegas for their teams. If you don't do something now, I could move. You've seen franchises move, and it's sort of every time a team moves, the other owners kind of like it, I think.
Well, if I come across James Dolan in public, I'm going to kneecap him. I just want to kick him in the knee. That's all. I think I can get away with that, maybe.
I think you should just check out the tour dates of his rock and roll band.
And heckle him.
I know you'd like to see him again. Yeah, and wait around the stage door entrance until he comes out and, heads for his private jet or whatever he does, and just give him a good shot. That would be nice.
I'll never forget it, Godfather, when I went to that Eagles concert in Moda and I saw that band out there. I had no idea. And I was like, who the hell is JD in the straight shot? And I did a little quick Google, and I was like, that's James Dolan. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. And he was up there hamming it, telling stories about the songs and talking about his band like someone cared. And I'm just like, this guy used his money and influence to open up for the Eagles. It blew me away, man. No shame in that. Unbelievable.
Well, yeah, and you and I like music, but in this case, we couldn't take it. We went out to the concourse and tried our best not to hear any of it.
Oh, my goodness. All right. We're talking to the Godfather, Dwight James. I'm curious what your scouting eye tells you about young Hansen and what you've seen down at Summer League thus far.
Well, I like what I've seen so far, but, I do this every year in Summer League. You caution people about not getting too carried away because, he's not really playing against NBA centers down there. And so he's going to, get a little more freedom of movement than he'll get when he gets in the league. And I think he'll be fine, and I think he needs to get time to grow. People shouldn't have real high expectations for him, especially because they have Donovan Clingan, who's going to start ahead of him, I assume, and it's going to be good. Clingan, most NBA people believe he's going to be a very good NBA center. He's a great rebounder. He can block some shots, and he can pass too. It's not like he's not a good passer. But certainly it's unusual to see a center, Chad, at that age who's more advanced offensively than he is defensively.
Yeah, interesting.
Particularly in this case where his offensive skills are low post skills, which, I think you got to go to China to get that stuff because we're not teaching that stuff in the U.S. anymore. Everybody's out of the three-point line. But unless you grow up in Eastern Europe or China, apparently, those guys still have those skills. But, on defense, he'll block some shots. He's not going to be a good pick-and-roll defender. And that's why I say, hit the brakes a little in Summer League because nobody's putting him in pick-and-roll coverage. And he'll have to be a drop defender in pick-and-roll coverage, I think. but and he's got a chance to be a good player, and that's the important thing. Really, is it looks like a good draft pick. They were right on in their assessment of him, and the sky's the limit. You know, it all depends on how he develops and what he does. I would just caution people not to have high expectations for him right away. It's really tough, especially for the big guys. People always talk about, well, it takes the big guys longer. Well, it does, and that's a real thing. And once he gets in the league, he'll find out, you know, that there's a lot to learn yet. And I think we have to be patient with that.
Yeah, you have always told me that, you know, rookies, the biggest adjustment, point guard and big man. So I'm going to write this down. So if I want to attend the Pete Newell big man camp, I have to go to China or Eastern Europe. Is that correct?
Well, Pete's no longer with us, and so I don't know if there is one anymore. I haven't heard of it in several years.
Yeah.
But Chad, really, you know, those low post skills are just lost in America now.
100%.
We're not seeing an awful lot. Yeah, Klingen's got some, and you know, I remember back, I was shocked when I saw my first look at Zach Randolph, and I went up to him right away after practice. I said, "Where did you get that drop step and the step through and all that stuff?" He said, "My high school freshman coach taught me all this stuff." I said, "You know, Zach, you're the only guy in the league that got." Yeah, you've got that stuff nobody else has, and he used it very well.
He should send that guy an agent fee, man. Zach, you know, we don't talk about Zach enough, but he carved out a long and very prosperous career, and he was a fan favorite here and in Memphis, man. I like Zach.
Oh, he could be mayor of Memphis. They love him there, and that's good, you know. And I think he did change a little bit in Memphis. He was better with the crowds and the fans, and didn't seem to get into any trouble down there, where he had a few skirmishes up here, and he was caught with a team full of people that probably didn't help him go down the right path sometimes.
Yeah, maybe.
Is that fair to say, Chad?
Yeah, I think so.
Think that's fair?
Yeah, maybe not the best influences on that particular team you're referring to.
Yeah, for a rookie, yeah, that's probably not real good.
Yeah, can you imagine young Zach probably thinking, "Whoa, this is what it's like in the league." Oh boy. One other just quick thought before you go: how much are you enjoying this LeBron drama down in L.A.? It's amazing.
Oh God. Yeah, and he's still got his media guys just holding on to all this stuff about. Whoa, yeah. Well, he had a great year last year. Yeah. Well, that's 2 years in a row last year that his team was better with him off the court than it was on the court. Now, that's a pretty large sample size of games when you talk about 2 years in a row. And so I don't want to hear too much about how great he was. Yeah, he rolls numbers. He's always been good at rolling up numbers. But once he gets in this spot, Chad, where he's not the guy, that's out of his comfort zone. He wants to be the guy pounding the ball, and you know, he wants to be the man, and he's not going to be that with Luka there. He's just not.
No, I've identified the number one LeBron apologist / publicist / voice. It's Nick Wright. Nick Wright is always pumping LeBron to a level I've never seen before. I'm like, wow. It's like, come on, Nick.
Well, it even goes to Bronny. I mean, I'm watching the Summer League games on TV, and I don't even know who was doing the play-by-play on the Laker game last night. But somebody hit a shot. Yeah, he hit a 15-footer. But anyway, we're talking about something else. Bronny James from the corner for three. You know, it's like they go crazy for anything that guy does.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. They're pumping him up all the time.
Oh, it's sickening.
God.
Sickening. All right, Godfather. I appreciate the time. You can read him, dwightjames.substack.com. And I appreciate your insight in summarizing everything with expansion. That's a very critical topic right now. Thank you, Godfather.
All right, Chad. Always a pleasure.
There you go. There's the Godfather, Dwight James. So we'll come back, and then I just want to summarize what the Godfather just laid out with NBA expansion. And he did confirm that James Dolan is a nut job, the owner of the Knicks. And he's problem number one. All right, 503-248-0620. We'll preview Open Championship with PJ Dave coming up at 520. I'm Chad Doing. You got the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. I'll tell you what's a pain. When you get a new phone and then you've got to go through and reset up all of your apps with your passwords and everything. And I didn't buy a new phone, but I've reached that point in time in my life where the phone that I have, I keep looking at the newer models, and they don't do anything that my current phone doesn't. So I don't want to bring on the cost of getting a new phone. So when the battery starts to get a little bit low or is not charging the way that it normally does, I just file a claim and get a replacement phone sent to me. So it cost me $0. And this phone will be good to go for about another 2 years.
Pretty genius, Chad. I've done that a time or two.
The other thing, too, OtterBox, these little things that we put our phones in to protect them. OtterBox may have the best warranty program on the planet. If your OtterBox gets warped or if it cracks.
Indestructible.
No questions asked. You just pay shipping, and they ship you out a new one, too.
Oh, yeah, it's nice. No, like that. What you're just talking about, I'm in between right now, having to get a new phone because my battery is starting to die on me a little bit. So I'm actually right at your point where I'm like, do I get a new one? Do I just get a reset? And quick question for you, Chad. Just asking for a friend. Is there ever a day in your future when Chad Dewing might have an iPhone?
No, this never happened.
Okay. I just had to ask. Green text message guy.
No, because I don't want to be pretentious like other Apple owners. Apple owners are very, I've noticed, they're almost cult-like in their following. And I respect the devotion, but I feel like they're going to ask me to come to church with them. They start talking about their iPhones and their computers. Now, I will admit that is it the iMac? What's the laptop?
MacBook Pros.
Okay. That is an elite product.
Oh, it is. It is.
The Apple laptops are phenomenal. Now, what I have found is I've got the Microsoft Surface Studio Pro.
Sure.
It's the best laptop I've ever owned in my life, and it's phenomenal. So what makes me happy is that the technology on the other side is getting better. Like this Surface laptop is about as good as it gets. Now, it's not as good as the Apple, but it's elite.
Oh,
So that's what I'm looking for. But the other reason why is that I've used the Samsung
for so long
and Windows for so long,
right,
that I don't want to go through the frustration of learning.
No, and to your point, I totally get that, Chad. And to your point, most people that I've talked to that stay with Androids are people who are like, look, usually Android technology is a little bit ahead of Apple. Like, again, you've got Androids that fold in half right now. You've got Androids that probably have better cameras than Apple right now. But like you said, Apple is kind of an odd status symbol. And as someone who has only Apple products, I'm kind of in that myself. But I respect it. I respect the game.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. See, there's a certain arrogance in that little discussion you just had.
Sure, I'll admit it.
Because you're an Apple lover.
Oh, totally. If they brought out an Apple car, Chad, I probably would buy it. Like, I ride for that little half-bitten Apple.
I know. You got the Apple Watch. I got the phone. I got the computer. I know. Rabid. They're as strong as horseradish, all of you. But I'll never forget it. Like, I think I was at the airport. I was waiting for a plane, a little layover in Oakland, and I had my Surface out. And this guy walked by. I don't even know this guy. I'm just minding my own business. He's like, is that a Surface? And I was like, yeah. I mean, it's got the Microsoft symbol on top.
Sure,
yeah, it's a Surface. He's like, he went right into, well, why don't you use Apple?
Oh, I don't even know you, dude. That's so, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to go back to whatever I was doing at the airport. Didn't really ask for your opinion.
My first thought was, what do you care? But I didn't say that, of course. But that's what I was thinking.
An Apple, yep, just one of them Apple guys, yeah. And I could see that being like, come on, dude, just like step off.
Well, I get people that they hassle me all the time because, like, they're like, you're drinking Starbucks? Like, I love coffee. I'm a coffee connoisseur. I drink it black. I love Americanos. Look, oh my gosh, it drives me crazy. I don't have a problem with big corporations. Number two, the reason why I drink Starbucks often is because they're available at all times. They're on every street corner, and the Starbucks mobile app is one of the greatest inventions in the history of man. And the problem is a lot of these local coffee shops that are fabulous and make better coffee, they don't open up as early. And when you go in, they don't have an app, so you have to wait in line. And I just don't have the time to deal with that type of hassle. Now, if I've got free time, I would much rather go to Coava or Stumptown or Barista or one of the local shops in town and get a really good handcrafted Americano. But again, it's about convenience. And the app, I can wake up, like in the morning when I get up to play golf, it's early. I wake up, I put on my clothes, I try to figure out, get my vision all set up because it's early and I'm trying to get the cobwebs out. I put in my app order, drive down the hill, and within 3 minutes I walk in and my beverage is waiting.
It's probably perfect 90% of the time, if not more, exactly how you like it. You pull right through the drive-thru, bing, bang, boom, done, which is,
I've always been amazed by franchising where I remember the first time I went out of the country, I went to Germany back when I was like 15, and my dad was over there working. And so my mom and I went over to stay several weeks with him. And I went to a McDonald's in Germany, in Berlin. And I walked in and got a burger, and I was like, it tasted just like the burger
That's awesome.
that I would get in the States. Now, they had different items on the menu and stuff, but a Starbucks overseas tastes the same as it does here. Like, I love that consistency and how they're able to duplicate that. Like, that's mind-blowing to me.
Oh, it
Very
is.
good.
I mean, the fact that, like you said, McDonald's French fries can taste the same, halfway across the world. It's, that's why they're McDonald's, right?
Yes. But the main reason why I don't utilize Apple is because, again, is it worth the change this deep in to go through the frustration of figuring out a new system and everything?
Probably not.
Exactly. All right, when we come back, I'll summarize everything that Dwight discussed so you can kind of understand where the NBA is at with expansion and what that means for the Trailblazers. And then we'll preview the Open Championship at 5:20 with PJ David Coleman here on the Rip City Drive. All right, it's now 5 o'clock. What's going on, my friends? The Major League All-Star Game is getting ready to kick off. First pitch coming up in just a moment. You can check it out on Fox. Cal Raleigh entered the All-Star break with 38 homers. He won the Home Run Derby last night. Trailblazers Summer League action will continue tonight as they meet the Pelicans. That tip-off from Vegas at 7. And you can watch it on Blazers Vision, ESPN, or KUNP. Caitlin Clark and Sabrina Ionescu will headline the three-point shooting contest Friday as the WNBA kicks off their All-Star Weekend. And Kirby Smart says the majority of SEC coaches favor the 5+11 model for college football playoff expansion, which is expected in 2026. We'll preview the Open Championship, which kicks off on Thursday. PGA Dave going to join the Rip City Drive at 5:20. I've got a 4-pack of tickets for the Hops coming up next. All right, it's Hops Ticket Tuesday. So I've got a 4-pack of tickets for you to go out to Hillsborough Ballpark and check out the Hops. And we do it each and every Tuesday here on the Rip City Drive. And this 4-pack of tickets will be for Tri-City at Hillsborough coming up on Saturday, which is the 26th of July. So if you would like a 4-pack of tickets, we'll take caller number 3 right now. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. 503-248-0620. Call now. I want to hear from a Hops fan. 503-248-0620. 4-pack of tickets for the Hops where you can sit in the Rip City Radio row and check out some baseball. And while you're there, you can check out the construction on their brand new ballpark, which is looking spectacular. So call now, 503-248-0620, 503-248-0620. Caller 3 will get a 4-pack of tickets for the Hops to take on Tri-City coming up on the 26th, 503-248-0620. It doesn't get any better than that. Summertime, baseball, and you sit in the Rip City Radio row. 503-248-0620. Call now, and you can get your tickets for the Hillsborough Hops. 503-248-0620. All right. Gotta love baseball. All right. I want to get everyone caught up. The Godfather, Dwight James, joined the show at 4:20, and he gave us the latest on where the NBA is at with expansion. So I want to walk through and kind of reset the basics of what he said so you know where the league is at and what that means for the Portland Trailblazers who are currently in that sale process. And that process is going to take 9 to 12 months. But the story came out today from David Aldridge in The Athletic. And I want to read a portion of this to you to kind of set up my conversation with the Godfather. David Aldridge writes, as the NBA Board of Governors meet today in Vegas, the subject of expansion is front and center for the fan bases in Seattle, Las Vegas, and other cities hoping to join the league. But the appetite for adding new teams might not be as strong as previously believed. Multiple senior team officials and people with knowledge of at least some owners' thoughts have told The Athletic in recent days that while Seattle remains a top candidate for a new or potentially relocated team among owners, there is not overwhelming momentum among governors to immediately expand past the current 30 teams. Central to that reticence is the league's new 11-year, $76 billion media rights deal beginning next season, with new partners NBC, Peacock, NBC streaming service, Amazon Prime, along with existing partners ABC and ESPN, Warner Brothers Discovery, which had broadcast NBA games since '89, was left out in the new deal. Several owners would, at present, rather begin collecting and splitting the massive new revenues among the existing teams rather than bringing in new partners that would also receive a cut of the financial pie. So, obviously, owners don't want to share the pie. Now, the Godfather said that in addition to the massive expansion fee that you've got to pay up front to become a new NBA team, they could also limit when the new teams get to share in the revenues. You know, they could say, hey, you can't share in the revenues for the first 3 years. I mean, they've got different ways they can get around that if there are owners concerned about not divvying up the pie with a couple of more pieces. In the report, continuing in The Athletic from David Aldridge, along with the discussion on expansion, the board will get updates on the pending sale of the Celtics to a new ownership group headed by private equity firm magnate Bill Chisholm, a deal that is ultimately expected to be approved for more than $6.1 billion. A vote on the sale will not be taken in Vegas, however. In addition, teams will get updates on the potential new European Basketball League that the NBA is endeavoring to create with FIBA, Basketball's International Federation. Commissioner Silver has in recent months softened his public comments on the inevitability of expansion and relayed that the league's timetable has slowed as it processed sales of the Celtics and Lakers. The NBA has also set its sights abroad and could launch the new European Basketball League in the next 2 to 3 years. Quote, I view that as a form of expansion as well. Oh, my goodness. A senior team official from another team said that the league was less inclined at the moment to push for expansion after finally getting the new media deal done on top of the new collective bargaining agreement reached in 23, and that at least some owners agree. Quote, there are people who are, I wouldn't say rethinking, but asking why we need to move as quickly as we expected. But the official added that the likelihood is still that the league will ultimately expand, just not right away. Another NBA owner shared that sentiment and said he believes expansion will still occur, though he did not put a timeline on the process. And finally, in this piece from Aldridge, the math is the math. Each current team is set to collect hundreds of millions of dollars over the life of the new deal, a welcome as many teams deal with the rupturing of the regional sports network model. One industry source believes that collectively NBA teams lost 9 figures worth of revenues over the last year or two as local RSNs collapsed. All right, so the push for expansion has slowed. And according to The Godfather, and this is widely known, James Dolan, owner of the Knicks, is the one who is really forcibly against expansion and is trying to rally the troops to shut it down because he's a greedy SOB and he doesn't want to share the revenues. Not to mention he's a bad guy, a bad owner, a bad front man for JD and the Straight Shot, and he had Charles Oakley escorted out of Madison Square Garden. All grounds for removal from the league, in my opinion. Thanks a lot, James. So James Dolan is leading the charge. The reason why this is important here in Portland is because if Seattle does not get an expansion team, then all of a sudden you look at the Trailblazers and who could potentially buy them and be the next owner and what that could mean about getting a basketball team in Seattle to be renamed the Sonics, and then all of a sudden you've got a team to fill Climate Pledge Arena. Now, the reason why this is interesting, Dwight said there are at least 2 groups located in Portland that he is aware of that have very strong financial backing and want to keep the Blazers in Portland. Now, what I've been told is that there's also 2 different groups inside of Amazon who have an interest in NBA ownership. And if Seattle is not awarded an expansion team, those 2 groups would have interest in purchasing the Trailblazers and then threatening to move them to Seattle to apply pressure to the NBA. And if they don't expand and give Seattle a team, they would move that team to the Emerald City. Now, the Godfather also said that, when push comes to shove, even if Adam Silver doesn't want a team to be moved to a different city, he has no power to stop it, no real power. And, of course, owners, they don't want to really kind of involve themselves in another owner's business, meaning if an owner comes in and wants to move a team after they purchase, the other owners don't want to step in and say, you can't do that, because they all want autonomy to be able to do whatever they want to do with their teams. So the bottom line is, I guess what you want to pull for as a Trailblazer fan, you want the NBA to add expansion. Give a team to Seattle, give a team to Las Vegas, and boom, you got 32 teams. And then the Trailblazers are secure in the Rose City forever. The problem is, in this sales process, it's going to go to the highest bidder. And that's going to be good for Paul Allen and all the charitable causes, that he wanted to accomplish. So the question is, the two groups that have great interest in buying the team and keeping it in Portland, if it gets into a bidding war, do they have the type of financial power to be able to bid against those groups from Amazon who print their own money? So that's where we're at. Now, I have been told all along that the NBA does not want the Trailblazers to move. They want both the team in Portland and Seattle. It's great for the geography. It's great to have regional rivalries. It's great for the league. They don't want the Trailblazers to move. But if James Dolan is able to get enough of the owners on his side to thwart the efforts for expansion, then all of a sudden the Blazers are in a position where what happens if one of those factions inside of Amazon buys a team? So there you have it. So very simply put, pull for expansion. You want Seattle to get awarded a team, and that will secure the Trailblazers in Portland forever. That's it. That's what you want. I can think of a lot of bad things that could happen in my life. Losing the Blazers to Seattle would be right at the top of that list. It would suck. Like, I like going up to Seattle. It's beautiful. But I hate the fact that we get lumped into Seattle all the time. Like somehow Seattle and Portland are the same. No, we're not. Two different states, two different cities, two different cultures, two different vibes, everything. We're not Seattle's redheaded stepchild. And I don't like getting thrown into that. It's like, no, we're Portland, all right? We like our own. Seattle can suck it. But losing the Blazers to Seattle would be an all-time, that'd be an all-timer right there. The ultimate kick to the package. But again, the NBA doesn't want it to happen. And expansion is probably going to happen, but the process is being slowed now. And if you want to point your finger at somebody in particular, James Dolan would be a great place to start. So there you have it. That's the latest. And Commissioner Silver, because he works for the owners, he has no real power. If somebody buys a team and wants to move them, they're eventually going to get what they want. So there you have it. There you have it. But the thought of the Blazers moving to Seattle, like that just sickens me. But again, I don't think it's going to happen. But the problem is, with the way things are developing right now, I guess we've come from it's not going to happen to where there is a possibility. But not a great possibility, but it's a possibility now. So hopefully we get expansion, Seattle gets a team, and then we can go about our business. All right, we'll come back, and we got to talk golf. Open Championships coming up. PGA Dave's going to break it down for us. I'm looking forward to it. The conditions, the course, Dave will get us prepared, and he'll give us his thoughts on, surprises, guys who could rise up in the tournament, who is going to be the likely winner, and then some dark horse picks as well. That's coming up next on the Rip City Drive. All right, always a pleasure to talk to our PGA insider and golf expert, David Coleman, who is back on the show. PGA Dave, what's up, brother?
Hey, Chad, thanks for having me back on, man. It's going to be a fun week over at Royal Portrush, and great way to conclude the major season in golf.
All right, let's start with the course, and I want to focus in on the weather. What is it that makes – what are the elements that you think when you look at the Open Championship that make it such a challenge?
I think, the thing is the unpredictability. The wind is unpredictable. The rain is unpredictable. You're playing golf courses where you've got to keep it much closer to the ground with your ball flight. And I think the thing, too, is that there's so many quirky bounces you can get. We don't play golf like that here in the U.S. where we depend on the ball rolling as much. We're trying to fly it onto the greens or fly it over a bunker, fly it over a water hazard, where there you're trying to navigate around these small pot bunkers, and you're trying to play different shots that you don't normally play day in and day out here in the U.S. So it's a really different kind of golf, and that's what makes it exciting. That's what can make it fun, and that's why, some years when the weather hasn't been great, we've seen some guys come out of absolute nowhere and win. And then years when the weather's been really good, we've seen some of the best players to ever play this game win. So it's a fun test because it's so unique, and the crosswinds on this course is so challenging to play in. And that's something that watching the coverage this week and listening to the coverage on the different outlets, it's been fun to hear about because it's not easy.
All right, give me kind of a breakdown on that with the crosswinds. Like when you're in the tee box, getting ready to hit your drive, or you're using a long iron, like what's going through your mind and what are you focusing on as a player when dealing with the crosswinds?
Yeah, so the biggest thing with the crosswind that's hard for a right-hander is the left to right wind. That's a really hard wind to hit into because a lot of these guys, on the tour, the better players, they hit a little left to right shot, especially for a right-hander. So that kind of works against, their mindset and their philosophy. And it's so hard to hit the ball solid in that kind of condition. So you've got to really make sure your fundamentals are strong. That's where you've got to really try to hit the ball probably a little bit lower. And you got to almost feel like in a crosswind, your expectations have to be a little bit less. So I think the guys who play good in crosswinds typically tee the ball down a little bit, and they try to hit the ball, maybe a little closer to the ground. And that's where I think, too, your mental game has to be so strong because, playing in the Open Championship, it's not like the U.S. Open or the Masters or the PGA where you're getting up and just trying to, swing for the fences. You've got to really play a much more controlled game. You got to hit irons off some tees, and your mentality is totally different playing links golf.
No question. We're talking with PGA David Coleman, getting ready for the Open Championship. All right, Jon Rahm is your pick to win the tournament. Why him?
Wow. He's got so many good finishes the last several years in the Open. And I think Rahm is finally, how do I say this? He's maybe over that whole thing of like, I'm disappointed I left the PGA Tour and I took the money from the Saudis to go play the LIV Tour. And I just think, to me, he's due to break out in a major. And I think Rahm is a guy that, he's still got a lot of great golf left in him. He seems like he's healthy this year. I know last year he was not healthy. He had some problems with his feet. It seems like he's been healthy all year. He's played pretty well over there on the LIV Tour. So I think, the biggest thing with Rahm is, to me, he hits the ball very accurately for a guy who's a long hitter too, which is so crucial in a major. That's why he's won a couple majors, and that's why he's won on some really tough golf courses. So I think there's no doubt that Rahm, to me, could finally break through this week and get it done. And I think it'd be great for the game if he could get it done because I think worldwide he's a very popular player. He wears his emotions on his sleeve, and I think that's going to be the one thing this week. His caddy and his team around him is going to have to really make sure that he doesn't get ahead of himself or get too emotional because the conditions can be so challenging at times.
Hey, Dave, what do your eyes tell you about Rahm's compact swing?
Oh, I think the one thing about his swing is he generates a lot of speed, even though his swing isn't that long. And I think, the one thing that he does, he has very good balance through the ball, even though, like I said, I think he was born with a club foot. So I think he's always had to play with something that, has been a little bit more challenging. But I think that compact swing gives him so much control, but at the same time, yet lets him generate so much power. So I think there's no doubt about it. Rahm, with that swing, that definitely can work well in the wind. And we've seen that the last few years. He has been a factor in the British Open, several times. He just hasn't broken through and gotten it done.
You know, one of my favorite guys on tour, and I think he's a really nice guy. I love hearing him talk about the game of golf. Tommy Fleetwood, you think he's got a chance to play well this weekend?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, Fleetwood had a great chance a couple weeks ago in the signature event at TPC River Highlands in Hartford. I think the only thing with him is his putter. That's the one question I've always had about it, is him and his ability to close out tournaments. Is his putting on Sundays is not up to the level of, what somebody would consider as a top player on the tour. But I think you look at his ball striking, you look at his consistency, you look at his record, as a Ryder Cup player, he's pretty much done it all but win on the PGA Tour. And I think it's only a matter of time before he wins out there. I mean, he's a guy that, is very, I mean, like I said, the consistency level of his career is unmatched. And I think no doubt, I mean, with his penetrating ball flight, he hits a right to left draw with most of the shots. I think that's definitely going to work well this week on that golf course, because there's a lot of holes where, again, you're going to have to flight the ball a little bit lower, and a draw in that kind of wind is not a bad shot to have, especially as a go-to shot where you got to flight it underneath the wind.
Hey, Dave, what happened to Cameron Smith?
I think the biggest thing is, it's funny. A few years ago, I mean, he won, the British Open at St. Andrews there. He beat Rory in that duel on Sunday. And everybody thought, man, this guy's going to take off. He had that incredible up and down on 17 there on the road hole where, his short game was just incredible. And then I think as soon as he took the money from Liv, I think he's not the same player. I think mentally, I think he's, kind of taken his foot off the gas. And I just think, to me, we've seen it happen with a bunch of guys that have gone over to Liv. I mean, they've gotten their money. And no disrespect to them, they earned that right. But at the same time, it seems like a lot of guys, Dustin Johnson's another guy like that. Mickelson is another guy. I mean, these guys are great players, and they still can be great players. But when you get that money, I think you lose your edge. I think you don't have the same drive that you had. And I think there's no doubt that Cameron Smith is not the same player he was a few years ago when, he played so well on the PGA Tour and won some really big tournaments.
All right, what do you expect from Rory McIlroy this weekend?
I think a lot of people are thinking big things from him. I mean, Monday was kind of like his day, with the media, and it seemed like all the coverage on the different outlets were talking about Rory, and because it's kind of like a home game for him. I mean, he grew up I think about an hour and a half from this course, so he's had to have played a fair amount of rounds on this course outside of the couple times he's played it competitively. So he's probably got a little more intricate knowledge of it. I think he's going to play pretty well. He played good last week in Scotland. He showed some signs in Hartford that he was coming back, and I think he's so comfortable back home there in Northern Ireland. I mean, that's where he grew up, and I think he's just thrilled to be back there, because I think the pressure after winning the Masters really got to him. I mean, we saw what happened at the PGA and the U.S. Open. He wasn't talking to the media. He looked like he was upset about things. But now I think, he's over there. He's more comfortable. I expect a pretty good week out of him, Chad. And I would say this, if he were to get it done this week, I think that would lock up Player of the Year for him. I mean, unless Scheffler could go on some crazy run in the playoffs and win maybe 2 or 3 events, I think Rory, if he were to win this week, I mean, 2 majors, finishes a career Grand Slam at Augusta, wins at Pebble, wins at TPC Sawgrass. I mean, wins basically, on almost like a home game type event here at the British Open. Man, what a year he's had, and it would be a phenomenal way to cap it off if he could get it done.
I would agree with that. PGA David Coleman here on the Rip City Drive. So what about Scheffler?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, Chad, is we talked about this for years, is Scheffler's putter. It's amazing. I mean, Scheffler can putt average or so-so, and he's still in the mix. And that's a credit to his consistency, his mental toughness, his will to win. And I think there's no doubt he's definitely going to be a factor in this tournament. I actually think slower greens help him because, he's not for that high of a level on the tour, he's a really good putter. But is he an all-time great putter? I don't think so. So I think slower greens actually help him a lot. And I think the biggest thing with him this week is, I think it's going to be staying out of the pot bunkers, understanding how to play the golf course. And then I think, too, it's interesting. He's a little bit under the radar. I mean, because last week he played good, but not great. And I don't think there's ever been a more underrated superstar in the history of golf like Scheffler. And I thought his comments today about the winning and everything that he said today were super interesting, because I think this is a guy who just loves the grind of it. He loves battling and practicing and working with his coach, but I think at the same time he's a really good family man off the course, and I think he really sees the real world aspect of it. And I thought his comments today were awesome, and I think it'd be great to see him win, because I think he's a good, role model for kids growing up playing the game.
I agree. So when you think about some of the best putters of all time, obviously Tiger and Jack come to mind. Who are some of the others? Would it be like Watson and Crenshaw? Who are some of the guys you think of as great putters?
Yeah. I mean, so obviously you'd have to put Ben Crenshaw in there. I mean, anytime you win twice at Augusta, you're definitely a wizard around the greens and on the greens. There's no doubt about that. Crenshaw, Watson was a great putter back in his day. At the end of his career, he wasn't the same putter he was early in his career, but he was a great putter. And then I think, you look at a guy like Brad Faxon, who, maybe wasn't a great ball striker, but man, he was unbelievable as a putter. And that's why a lot of pros, Rory, many other guys go to him for advice, because I think they know he's got such intricate knowledge of the stroke and, how to be a good putter. So I think Fax is a guy that I definitely would put in that category. And, I think the other guy I would put in there, Lauren Roberts, was a guy that was a really underrated player that didn't win for a long time on tour. But he was a great putter, and he had the nickname Boss of the Moss for the reason, because, he really knew how to get it done, on the greens, and he won on some good golf courses too, throughout his career. So I think there's no doubt that, he was a great putter. And, I think the guy that, really was an underrated putter that didn't get the credit he deserved was Ernie Els. I think Ernie Els was a guy that made a lot of putts, and he was a little bit snake bitten over his career, but man, he made a ton of putts throughout his career. I remember probably a little bit over 10 years ago now when he won that last British Open. He made some huge putts coming down the stretch there. So Ernie was a guy that I thought was a great putter. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of guys that were, really good putters through their careers, but to really become one of the all-time greats, that's what separates a Tiger and Jack from, say, a guy like Rory. So, yeah, it's no doubt putting is such a big part of the game.
Well, I can watch, like Fred Couples, I can watch Ernie Els swing a golf club all day. It's remarkable. How do you enjoy playing link-style golf compared to the more natural rolling style?
I think, like when those guys go over there, what I've heard guys do is they get over there like a couple weeks early. Like I know Shane Lowry was talking about it on Monday with the media. He was saying he had played a number of courses leading up to the Scottish Open. So I think a lot of those guys get over there early and get a feel for it, because it is so different than playing here in the U.S. And it's like a fescue type grass they're playing on, which is very different than, what we're used to here in the U.S., where it's Bermuda or bent grass. So it's very, it's very unique. And I think it's almost like an acquired taste, where I think at first you probably don't like it, because you're used to like, okay, I hit my 8-iron 170 yards and I expect to hit it that, where in Scotland or Northern Ireland or England on a links course, an 8-iron might be a 185 shot. The next hole might be a 125 shot. So there's a lot of nuances to it, a lot of, intricate knowledge of playing links golf. And I think you have to learn to love it. But I think once you learn to love it and play it, a lot of it's about avoiding trouble, like staying out of the pot bunkers and knowing the lay of the land too, and understanding that, having a good caddy who's caddied on those types of courses is a big part of it as well. So I think there's no question that, links golf is fun, but I think, it's something that these guys enjoy playing for a few weeks out of the year, but it's something to play all the time. It's challenging because, you're not really hitting the ball up in the air all the time like these guys do around the world. So it is definitely different than, just getting up and saying, hey, what's my launch angle with the driver? And I want to, hit it at a certain window and hit it, left to right with like a 2 or 3 yard cut. So it's fun to watch, but at the same time, I think it could be maddening to play too.
All right, PJ David Coleman here on the Rip City Drive. Dave, as always, man, I appreciate it, buddy. Enjoy the tournament, and I can't wait to talk to you next week to recap.
Yeah, you got it, man. Yeah, we'll talk next week, and looking forward to the event. It's like I said, it's one of the coolest events of the year. You never know who's going to win this tournament. There's so many different guys that could contend depending on the weather, and it's just fun to see a different test of golf, like they get to play once a year over there.
All right, you got it, buddy. I'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, man.
There you go. PGA David Coleman breaking down the Open Championship. His pick to win the tournament is Jon Rahm. And he thinks Tommy Fleetwood's got a chance to, really show out and show well, which is cool. All right, 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. 503-248-0620. Yeah, that course looks tough. But Rory McIlroy, that means a lot to him to be back. But let's see if I think I saw his comments somewhere. Now, he was asked about what it was like to be back. He said it means an awful lot. It's weird. It doesn't feel like 6 years has passed since 2019. I think it's amazing that Portrush has this opportunity so soon after the last Open to host again. Just great to be back. I don't spend a lot of time in these parts anymore, just with travel, schedule, living abroad, all that stuff. To be here to see a lot of familiar faces, even every hole in the course has a different team of marshals from different golf clubs. And just to see the people that I've met throughout the years out here this morning was really nice. It's really nice to be back and obviously very excited for the week. So big opportunity for Rory. Scheffler will be there, Rahm, all the big names. So we'll see how things shake out. And speaking of golf, the weather right now is awesome. Blue skies, warm weather. And that reminds me that we have coming up on Monday, it's the 5th annual We Play Open. And it's got a 1:45 shotgun start out at Langdon Farms Golf Club. 100% of the proceeds benefit We Play Foundation, which is dedicated to giving access for all children to sports. And you can go to weplayfoundation.org/events, and you can sign up as a single. You can put in your foursome right now, and the tournament's going to kick off at 1:45 on Monday. Alex Brink, former Coug, Ryan DePaulo, former Duck from E4 Sports. They're the two hosts of the tournament, and it's a good time for a very good cause. And you can purchase birdies, eagles. There's some extras there, some prize tickets. They always have a nice, gift bag for everyone who participates. But it's definitely a good time. So join us out there on Monday for the We Play Open 5th annual at Langdon Farms Golf Club. And besides, it's summertime. You don't want to be at work. It's going to be 78 degrees and sunny. You would rather be out on the golf course. I know how this goes. Take advantage of the time while you got it. All right, we'll keep things rolling here. Big thanks to PGA David Coleman. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. You got the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, Trailblazers going to be playing tonight against the Pelicans. Tip off at 7 from Vegas. Right now, the NL has a 2-0 lead on the AL, and they're in the second inning. Kershaw right now on the mound for the National League. So that's pretty cool. And then we'll get on to the second half of the baseball season. College football season is right around the corner. I'm not sure why I chose now to start getting the hiccups, but I feel like they're coming on. That's a problem. I can't remember the last time I had hiccups when I was on the air. So this is good. Good time of the year. Slow time for sports, but everything's right around the corner. It was announced today the name of Portland's new WNBA team will be the Fire, the Portland Fire. And I'm pretty excited about this because it's going to give us a chance to see Caitlin Clark and some of the other stars in person, which is cool. And that's going to be fun to watch. I will tune in for that to see Sabrina v. Caitlin in the three-point shooting competition. Like, that's going to be a good time. That is something that you want to see. Sabrina's terrific. Caitlin is terrific. And they both, have the ability to drain it from long range, which is cool. So that's coming up. Other than that, I'm just excited for football. College football is going to be phenomenal this year. The Big Ten has loaded up the SEC. I think the Big 12 is going to be wildly fascinating. And I'm excited to watch the Sun Devils, who are loaded up. I'm interested to see what continuity is going to do for them in a day and age where we don't have a lot of that in college football. 18 of their 22 starters return. And Sam Levitt from West Lynn is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Hey, Brenden, what's the latest on what you're hearing with the Beavs as they prepare for camp?
Yeah, I mean, we're approaching an exciting and intriguing season. I'm hearing, pretty good things as far as where they are health-wise. We're in such a better place than where Oregon State was last year. And, yeah, I'm real excited for fall camp. I think just under 3 weeks is when we're going to start. How
excited are you to see their new quarterback in operation?
I mean, just knowing what we know now, Chad. Like, last year, I'm sure I had beaver-colored glasses being like, oh, yeah, Giovanni McCoy or Ben Gilbranson, they'll win them a bunch of games. And you kind of look back and you're like, yeah, they were a little bit subpar. And I think that's putting it kindly at the quarterback spot last year. And then you went out and paid a lot of NIL money and got a dude in Malik Murphy who, from the early impressions seemed to fit, the system like a hand in the glove. He's like, I've transferred twice in my college career. I don't want to go anywhere else. So, that's kind of like a perfect marriage for them. And, you talk about the defense last year, so injury-riddled. They're going to be healthier. I'm not saying expect the moon from Oregon State, Chad, but I would be shocked if this team doesn't blast past their I think their over-under right now is 6.5 for wins. I think they'll get past that this year.
Oh, so you've got the over 6.5 for the Oregon State Beavers then?
Yeah. No, I feel pretty confident saying that. I mean, again, last year the Beavers were not a good football team. I would ask fans to see Cal, see Air Force. Those two stand out the most, but they were not a great football team. And they still won 5 games and had, a pretty good win against Washington State late in the year. So I think when you fill a lot of the, gaps, fill some of the leaks, so to speak, this schedule's a little tougher. And there's a lot of games that could go either way. And I think that's the uncertainty with this year is there's a bunch of opponents that you look and it's going to be a pick'em type game for the teams being evenly matched. But yeah, I think 7, 8 wins is probably a solid baseline this year, Chad.
All right. California and Fresno State, the first 2 games, August 30th and September 6th, both are at Research Stadium. And then they travel to Texas Tech to take on the Raiders. That's going to be a tough game. Texas Tech, one of the best teams in the Big 12.
They look really good this year. Yep, very tough game. And then you got Oregon on the road. So, I mean, it's challenging. I think you're going to find out a lot about Oregon State those first 2 weeks. It's not easy to open up with a Power 4 opponent in Cal, and Fresno is always ready to play Oregon State, so it seems. So, I mean, you look at the schedule, Chad, they don't even get an FCS team until week 7, week 8, and don't have it in front of me when they play Lafayette. So it's just a very weird schedule this year, kind of like we saw last year. You play Washington State twice. So I'm curious to see how they, take advantage of the schedule that's there, or if there's some bumps in the road, and how that all ultimately shakes out.
Who the heck are the Lafayette Leopards?
Let me tell you, I had to when the schedule came
Seriously,
out.
like I've never heard of them before.
No, when the schedule came out, I was like, oh, Louisiana Lafayette, like the Raging Cajuns. I've heard of them before. They're like, no, like Lafayette Leopards, like that. I don't know if you've ever had a smaller team come into Corvallis, maybe like Nicholls State a handful of years ago, but that's a small school.
Well, just based on the schedule itself, I see them getting 7 or 8 wins.
I think as long as they avoid
I mean,
major,
they got some cupcakes.
yeah, I mean, if they
It
avoid
comes down to injuries.
Yeah, if they avoid major injury, like, again, as long as Malik Murphy stays healthy, I think if, he were to get injured, it kind of puts you in a real tough spot. But keep Malik Murphy healthy. There's a few – the only as I set right now, Chad, biggest question mark I have with this group is the offensive line heading into this year. So that's what needs to flesh itself out during fall camp, and I'm kind of curious to see how that all shakes out.
I'm excited about Oregon State making a trip in mid-November to my hometown. They're going to take on the Tulsa Golden Hurricanes.
Yes. I've actually got some family members, some family that lives just outside of Stillwater, and I've had a couple family members already hit me up.
Wait a second. You've got family members in Oklahoma?
I do.
How come we never talked about this?
I don't know why we haven't, but
now,
yeah.
when you say outside of Stillwater, where at? What town?
I would need to look and get back to you. So next time we host, I'll have an answer
my
for you.
My parents grew up just outside of Stillwater.
Yeah, no, part of the my granddad, like most of the Slaughter family actually was originated in Oklahoma. My granddad came out here to Oregon, and a whole bunch of, his siblings stayed out there. So every time we get a family reunion, we've got family coming over from Oklahoma. They're big old Cowboys fans, and yeah, it's always good. And that's the small little connection we got between us.
Very interesting.
So yeah, I'll get back to you on that for sure.
All right. Brendan's got Oklahoma connection. I had no idea. He doesn't tell me things like this. Yeah, that schedule's pretty easy. They should be able to get to 7 or 8 wins. And, Trent Bray, of course.
Cushing, Oklahoma.
Cushing, Oklahoma.
Yep, just had to look up my cousin on Facebook. But yes, Cushing, Oklahoma.
Good gracious. Okay, let's see here. Let me pull that up on the map. This is amazing.
we're breaking new barriers here on Rip City Drive, folks.
I mean, this is right around the area. I used to go to play baseball games in Cushing.
Oh, yeah. No, like I said, the whole contingent, the family, been out there for, quite some time. They've lived out there forever. And when we saw this schedule and Tulsa come on the schedule, my dad and my younger brother were like, oh, we should try to go to that game. I was like, might have to see a weekend work out there.
That's 32 miles from where I grew up in Manford.
Man, they say the world is small, Chad. That proves it. You and I have known each other for 6 years now, and we just now figured that out. So, small world.
Gosh. I had no idea. All right, that's going to do it for us. Big thanks to our guests today, Casey Holdaw, the Godfather Dwight James, and PGA Dave. I'll be back with the Rip City Drive tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Big thanks to Brenden Slaughter. I hope all of you have a great evening, and I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Have a good night.